Good afternoon and welcome to the FIH Pro League show. I'm Marsha Cox and I'll be hosting two very important guests today. We've seen a lot of action since mid-Feb, 30 Pro League games being played across both men and women's competitions. But before we get into it, joining me today is a commentator who has commentated very well. I don't even know how many international games, Dan. I think we need to find out how many international caps you have as a commentator. But in these last few international Pro League games, you've commentated 50% of them. So really looking forward to chatting about them with you.
It's been busy. Good to be here.
And an Australian player, two-time Olympian, silver medalist in Tokyo 2020, almost 200 international games for Australia, joining me from Europe, I must add, Matthew Dawson. Thank you for joining us in the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And yeah, like Dan said, there's been a lot happening recently, so it's exciting.
Yeah, indeed, it has been exciting. So we kicked off this calendar year with quite a few women's internationals with China, USA, Germany, and then we had New Zealand, China, USA. It was a little bit of an open field as well. In that first leg, you had China not really performing as well as they should have. Germany and Australia leaving that little tournament, mini tournament, quite successful, having won 3 games each. China going to shootouts twice. Dan, do you recall, I know it's been a lot of hockey, but that leg and that start of this year with those international games, it was quite interesting to see. Also interesting to see Germany's performance.
Yeah, it was. And the one slight tweak I'd make to what you said about that Sydney leg, I was actually really quite impressed by how China played at times. Bearing in mind the squad they brought, they'd made 8. They had eight debutants. They didn't quite get the results, but it was a different leg to the one that followed. You know, playing USA and New Zealand, I mean, no disrespect at all to USA and New Zealand, is a bit of a different proposition to the Hockeyroos and Germany. All 3 teams at different times in the competition played quite well. Germany had a bit of a shocker one day against Australia, lost 3-0. But there were some good performances all round actually in the Sydney leg. But yeah, I was impressed by all 3 teams.
Yeah, indeed. And, speaking about the second leg, then when they went over to New Zealand, and then you saw China gain a bit of momentum in terms of results as well. I think that while they were gaining momentum, they took that knock against USA. And I think that was a bit of a surprise result, wasn't it?
It was, because I think I have to say I've been on record to say that my belief was that USA would be the obvious team for relegation this year. Sorry, let me just phrase that properly before it all started. Really impressed by actually how the USA have gone. It's how they equipped themselves now, which last year they looked like a college team. And I don't mean that particularly rudely. They just didn't look to the level that the other teams were. David Passmore is clearly doing something right in the structures he's putting in, but he's also got some really good quality newer players and older players that are stepping up, and their goalkeepers are superb for USA. So they'll surprise some people, as we saw there.
They did surprise us indeed when they also they beat New Zealand as well as Australia in the next leg. They've had quite a few games, of course. But so they've played 8 games and they've won 3, which is quite interesting. You talk about having a nice balance between experience and new players. They've got, if I'm not mistaken, 30 players with under 30 caps at this season of the Pro League.
I'm going to have to take that as fact because I haven't got that in front of me.
Yeah. Okay, well, I've checked this. Yeah, Matthew, I saw your facial expression as a player, thinking of the USA team with that balance of experience, or should we say inexperience. Are you quite impressed as well with their results and beating the Australian women?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's the way hockey seems to be going at the moment. You get that blend of youth and re-energizing the program, which it's probably shown over the last couple of years with USA women, and they've had previous good results in when it used to be world leagues, but now moving forward, and yeah, who knows what can happen with more experience under the belt, with more pro league games, and then moving forward to next year in the Olympics.
Yeah, indeed. And you know, Dan, you talk about the changes that they've made in their squad from last season to this season, but also we've seen a lot of articles of the changes that they've made in their staffing, and also focusing on coaches with specialist skills. Talk about their goalkeeper. They've also just added, they've made an addition to the goalkeeper coaching. They've made it in addition to their striker coaching. So they really have focused on those specialist skills. And I think it's starting to pay off to go to shootouts twice and to win that as well. It shows you on both ends, from attacking and defense. Your goalkeeper.
Yeah, something David Passmore said to me was also about it sort of beyond just the micro of positional coaching as well, was what he's trying to do within the greater structure of US hockey, because they've got, we spoke talking about this on commentary on their matches, they've got like a college system that the rest of the world just thinks is amazing in real terms. You know, the amount of money, the amount of infrastructure, all that side of it. As he said, he's very much trying to link up with the college system to have a back and forth conversation, because one of the issues there is if the college system's putting in all the money, right, putting in so much money, obviously USA Hockey do as well, but if they're putting in a lot of the money, they kind of have more say over what the players do. Where with the Pro League, he kind of needs to be able to say, well, actually, can we have them for a set period of time? And so I think it's great having goalkeeper coach, striking coach, things like that. You kind of need the time with the players as well. As Matt will attest to, if you've not got time with your coaches, it's all a balance, because Australia have players off playing in Europe, so they're not always back in Australia getting quality coaching time. I think that's the crucial thing for US hockey, is marrying up the infrastructure between the college system and the US national team, but it's clearly happening to a degree, and there's clearly some very good college players coming through as well. Sessa and Shoulder were two that stood out for me.
Yeah, well, it's going to be quite an interesting road ahead for them as well, because while they've shown a lot of promise and also quite a lot of excitement in these youngsters that they've invested a lot of energy and time in, we know that in this season of the Pro League there is that relegation kind of pressure, as well as qualification for the Olympics. So for all of these teams playing in the Pro League, they've got double pressure, having to play this competition as well as needing to qualify for the Olympic Games. And speaking about Olympic qualifiers, we know that like the Australian women's funding has been reduced. Matthew, you know how important that funding is in an Australian setup, but then how important does the Pro League now become? How important does that become in this program?
Yeah, for sure. And the Hockeyroos have made some changes with their squad size of cutting it down to 22 people, but obviously having an extended squad and people from outside that squad being eligible to be selected for this game. And the games, like you said, qualifying for the Olympics is probably at the forefront of their mind at the moment, but then bringing in new players this year, and I think it showed in a few results that they were able to beat Germany, beat Argentina as well. Good challenges for a young group with a few people out still. I think it's exciting for them, and they had a good result last year at the World Cup. I think it's only on the improve for them. They've obviously changed their coaching staff after a period of time that is probably well documented. I think it's all on the improve, and results are showing.
Yeah, well, so far they are ranked second on the Pro League rankings. And of course, we know it's weighted, and we know that there's still a lot of games to be played, and there are a lot of teams that we haven't seen in action. But so far, Argentina and Australia women are the two most successful teams in the Pro League. So also really looking forward to seeing them in the upcoming stages, where we know that they'll be playing very soon, actually in April.
The assumption, looking at the league table with Netherlands in fourth, having played 4 and won 4, is essentially, you can assume Australia are third, and I mean that as a positive thing. Like when you say about it being weighted, because okay, we can't guarantee that Netherlands are going to go and win the next 4 games, but they're four and no losses, so they're quite a decent team, the Dutch. But so actually, when you look at it like that, Australia, that 15 points in the first 8 games is really good. That's a really good performance. Tell you what, just talking about the women's table. June the 21st, and I couldn't see where the second game is, but Great Britain, USA in London at Lee Valley. That's a huge game in terms of relegation battle, and we'll know more about that after Christchurch as well, because obviously New Zealand are down in that sort of conversation too. It's some really interesting league at the moment.
Yeah, it is. And not only on the women's side, but also on the men's side. So we've seen a lot of action as well. And the Australian men have had to do quite a bit of travel in the last month. But a team that has stood out for me is the Spanish men. Matthew, what is your take? Have you got to watch them, see some of their games? It's quite interesting.
Well, fortunately, I actually played Spain in Hobart. And yes, well documented again. We lost against them twice. But for me, we played Spain in the World Cup in the quarterfinal, and historically, Spain and Australia have really close matches. The past 2 Olympics, we haven't beaten Spain. So yeah, for me, Spain at the moment, their average age is, I believe, under 25 or something. And they have some really good players coming through. I think Max has got them playing really well structurally, but then they have some key players in their team that stand up in big moments and are able to control the game. And for me, the Spanish flair is sort of coming back. There was a period of time where, yeah, they were a bit down, but now it seems to be back, and it's great for world hockey.
Yeah, it certainly is. It definitely adds a different dimension to it, especially, one of the things that we talk about is like the different phases of the year, or the different phases of a program. And for the men's competition, it's quite interesting because this is on the back end of the World Cup. And like you say, Matthew, you played against Spain in the World Cup, and then you guys play them early in the second round of the Pro League season 4. And then you have completely different results. How, like, as a player, how different is your mental approach for Pro League games versus something like the World Cup?
Yeah, it's extremely difficult. And for us at the moment, we obviously had a disappointing finish to the World Cup. In 2 minutes changes our whole outlook on a World Cup. So we lose our last 2 games, and I think there's still some fallout coming from that. And you can probably see with the inconsistent performances that we're putting out, and us bringing sort of new players into the group, debuting 5 players in the last 6 games. We haven't done that a lot. So it's sort of, we're trying to figure out and feel out where we're at. We obviously have a pretty important time coming up. We go to New Zealand and play Great Britain and New Zealand, but then we also come to Europe and have games against Belgium and Holland, which is great preparation for us leading into what is now the most important part of this year, and that's qualifying for the Olympics.
Yeah. Well, it's what is always like interesting for me as well is that a lot of teams will be using these games to indeed test and try out, either if it's new styles of play or whether it's new players. We're definitely seeing a lot of the less experienced players given the opportunity to play, whether it's a combination of intentionally planning that with trying out new things, or whether it's also circumstantial, like yourself having missed the last few games, having to fulfill your commitments in the Hoofdklasse. There are many players, both on the men and the women's side, having to do that as well. But it definitely adds a new dynamic to the game. And I'm quite interested to see how, different teams progress. Dan, you spoke about the upcoming games with GB women, but it's also the same with the men, I'm sure. But looking at, we've seen Australian men played a lot these last few weeks, but Argentina as well. And then, of course, Spain. And Spain have probably been fortunate enough to have a little bit more consistency in what they're putting out.
Spain, Matthew made the point a while ago, you played them in the World Cup, and everyone kind of went into that game. You may not have, Matthew. I don't know although I know how positive the Australian mentality is within the squad, but kind of looked at it and went, Australia should beat Spain here. But Morales missed a stroke, didn't he, right at the end of the game, which would have made it 4-4. Now that you spoke a minute ago about constriction on the numbers within the Australian women's program and budget constraints, which happen. That's cyclical within nations. That's happened in all countries all over the world. I know it's happened within Great Britain at times where teams have produced worse results, etc. But you look at that, and that was turned around, and Morales scored the stroke, and then whatever happens, and Spain win a quarter final. That's a totally different outcome for Australia, a totally different outcome for Spain. I think the difference for Spain out of that result is I don't think they would have gone into that World Cup expecting to make a semi-final, which I think the Kookaburras would have done. They carry forward, as you said, Max is a phenomenal coach. They carry forward some exciting young talent who haven't really been there and done it yet. The difference this week in the Pro League for Australia was you had 4 debutants and 3 or 4 other relative newbies. Jaden Atkinson, you're testing me now. I should have had the team sheet in front of me. James, he's brilliant. I was so impressed. He's absolutely brilliant. But the debutants I thought played really well. And then Gupta didn't quite fire in the penalty corners, but I thought he played well at the back. They bought in, and all 3 teams this week and other teams as well have bought in real exciting players. They won't all make it through the cups that are coming up in the next 6 months or so as they go into Oceania Cup, European Championships, etc., Pan Ams. But it's about having a look at your bigger squads, and that's what the Pro League is so important for. And also the fact that Matt Dawson's off there playing in the Hofklasse, still playing at the top level of hockey, but giving other players the opportunity to come in and wear a Kookaburra shirt and develop the Kookaburra brand of hockey. That's as important as well. So I think that's why the Pro League is really important, but it's also important that the likes of Matt are contracted into the top leagues in the world.
Yeah, indeed. And, speaking about teams that we're also quite surprised with is Germany, the German men. They've kind of been a little bit of like hot and cold, I think, these last few games. Dan, what's
it probably shows as well the players that they're missing from the World Cup. Welland, the best player at the tournament, arguably the best player in the world at the moment, didn't play any of the games. Matt Scrambush missed the last 2, I think, through illness. They had maybe 1 or 2 retirements as well. So like Rua's out. They just I think it's that period of time now after the World Cup. They've won the World Cup. What a better time for them to bring some young guys in and give them a go. And to be honest, what a better place to do it and play India in front of 20,000 people. Doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, those crowds were incredible, and also great for the Indian team, who took a really big knock in the World Cup, having had a lot of media attention leading up to that World Cup. Post the World Cup, they haven't officially announced their new coach.
They have.
Sorry. Yes. My mistake. I thought that they hadn't announced it officially, but yes, having a new coach, new face, it's it's great to see that the crowds are still coming out to support them and getting behind them, and for them to also produce some good results.
The Germany results didn't really surprise me that greatly, because if you've just won a World Cup and, as you hope they would, probably gone and partied for 2 weeks, I think you probably should if you just won a World Cup. Then getting yourself back up for the next round of Pro League matches, a month later, and as you said, you take out Windfeder, Ruhr, Velen, Trompertz has retired, and congratulations to him on a great career. The players they brought in, 1 or 2 played really well, but they took a bit more time to get into it. I think looking at India, David John and BJ Kadiappa, who were the temp coaches, they just seem to have done really well to build a a positive mentality off the World Cup. And bear in mind, this is a team that haven't actually lost a regulation time game since the 4th of December against Mr. Dawson, right? So Indian hockey's in crisis. I wish the teams I followed, football, cricket, rugby, whatever, in crisis, if they actually had only lost on a penalty shootout, which is all India. India have lost one match on a shootout in all that time. I think the biggest thing for India, which the crowd really loved, was they made that structural change. Manpreet dropped back, Dilpreet dropped into midfield, and it worked for them. And they've got some exciting young forwards who were scoring some pretty exceptional goals, to be honest. I thought that mini tournament had some really exciting new players coming in, but also some really interesting changes within the formats of the teams as well. Like Eddie Ockenden dropping in at centre back was an interesting one, and it seemed to work quite well from his point of view. I think it's and great to see 20,000 people in the stadium in Radcliffe. I mean, can't get much better than that.
No, it can't. I don't know, Matthew, I'm sure you can agree on that, having played with those crowds. Yeah,
for sure. And they love it. The noise is crazy. And anytime India get the ball over the attacking half, the crowd seems to light up. So it automatically puts you on edge. But yeah, what a great experience for young guys coming into world hockey, being exposed to that so early.
Yeah, indeed. Well, gentlemen, it is actually, we're running out of time for this show. We could, I think, chat forever. Like we said, 30 international games being played in the space of a month. That is absolutely insane, absolutely exciting for hockey lovers like us. We know that there's a lot more action coming up. We have a little bit of a break, and then in April, it just explodes again with lots and lots of action. So for the viewers out there, please make sure to check it out on the FIH Pro League. And don't forget to watch it on watch.hockey. You'll listen to Dan with all these anecdotes and great commentary on the games. Thank you for joining us today.